Closed session, we have Carrie, we have Jill Gretsch, Joe Beta Daniels, Michael Thomas, and Julie Swinehart. We're missing Allison Kelly and Don Albert tonight. And then we also have Brian Sashak and Ed Piotrowski joining us as well. So 2 agenda items this evening in closed session. The first one, okay, moving on to agenda item 2. Call Harris. Thanks, Ed. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, you've reached the cell phone for Eris Gallianis. Can't take your call right now. Please leave a message. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you think he is?
No, I think he would. I think Marilyn would have thrown him in there.
Yeah, for sure.
She would have, for sure.
Let me just email him real quick and make sure.
Do you have his cell number? Were you dialing his cell?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, this is Eris.
Hi, Eris. It's Brian. How are you?
Hey, good. I'm sorry. I saw that I missed your call. I was just texting you, so ignore the text. Don't worry about it.
That's okay.
But I'm available right now.
Thank you. So we're in closed session. We have board members Carrie Dillon, Jill Gretsch, Michael Thomas, Julie Swinehart, and Joe Beta Daniels, and then myself and Brian Sashak as well.
Great. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Iris.
Okay, so let's just jump in. So just to kind of rehash where the board's been on the topic of the Willow Springs property. Back in March, we received a letter of intent from Bridge Industrial, and then following some discussions in April, May, the board authorized us to move forward with engaging with John Casarda to complete an enrollment projections report, which we received in August. So about a week or two ago, I sent the board the original letter of intent, the appraisal that was also part of the work that we were going to do this summer, as well as the Casarda report as well. So I think our agenda for tonight really is, first of all, are there questions or thoughts regarding the enrollment projections report that you've seen? And then really, I have an idea of what we see as some next steps, and really just looking for some feedback from the board on whether we proceed with those next steps or whether there's some additional ones that we should look at. And so that's really what we want to talk about tonight. So I guess we just start with the enrollment report. Obviously, it's a pretty lengthy report. To me, I think the most important part is Table 16 on page 44. Which is really the 3 different projections that he provides as we look out. I think he went out to like 2039, so around about 17, 18 years. So that gives you an idea on the low end where we would be, if it's in the middle where we would be, and if for some reason, growth exceeded expectations, where we would be. Historically, here at LT, we've always been really close to that Series B projection, which is right in the middle, which I'm going to have to pull my report out, but that number was right at 4,000, I think, projected. It was 3905, which is really, where we're always at is around 3,900 to 4,100. So I look at that as, this was a really big piece of the discussion we had back in the spring, because if the board is ultimately interested in exploring a potential sale, I think the first question the community is going to ask is, do you need the property? What do your enrollment projections look like? So,
and I think you pointed to page 44, page 45 has it in a graph format, and I think when it comes to thinking about it and or communicating externally, it starts with 1990, but 1970 something had a high. So I think it's even a better selling point if you extend the time frame back further to demonstrate that we had much higher enrollment and didn't
that's a good
feel
point.
the need, and now we're lower off of historic highs with projections that are expected to settle in a fairly narrow range between A, B, and C. But I think you can demonstrate visually for people how much
Yeah.
lower that is than those highs.
Yeah. Did I see that we were 2,800 or something like that in the late 90s? Like we were pretty low.
Low.
Yeah.
28.
But the whole enrollment history going back to the 40s, I think, is in the report. So you can kind of see how it's fluctuated over the years.
And I guess the question I would have is how much can the school, what's the capacity of the school as it is now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Like meaning how many more students could we add before we would need to?
Yeah. Or where did all the students fit when you had 5,130 of them?
Right.
So the way I would answer that is
Nobody
I
might
think
know that one.
I think that would
But-
be like dangerous to compare those time periods because there were no caps on IDA was not in place yet when we were 5,130. So we had probably 30 students in a classroom. We certainly didn't have any special education classrooms with 12 or 13 students. We didn't have those programs. So it's, I'll make an anecdotal statement and say we're really fortunate to have pretty low class sizes here. So if we all of a sudden had some unexpected growth and we had 4,500 students or 4,700 students and we wanted to stay on this campus or in these campuses, then we would need to increase class sizes.
Okay.
Is there anything in our contracts with teachers about class size and things like that? Just taking that a step
Yeah.
further.
So no individual classroom sizes, but each teacher has a cap of 130.
Okay.
So they can't have more than 130 students, except for band and PE. They can have more.
But aren't there several classrooms, to really get creative, if you had no additional classrooms, aren't there classrooms that are unused
Yeah.
during every period?
Yeah.
Like-
Yeah.
We don't-
At
I
any
don't know
given
the number,
at
but-
any given point, we have open classrooms.
Right.
We are by no means busting at the seams on our campuses, but we do utilize our space in a really effective way. But we have room for growth if we needed it.
So it's not like you're capped at 4,300 students and you're like,
Right. No.
what are we going to do?
Right. If that would probably require more extensive study, right, to determine if we went 45, 40, to 5,000 students. I can't imagine us being able to fit them on these two campuses.
Well, I mean, could you potentially build on to each of these as well?
Maybe South Campus more so than
Build
probably
up?
Yeah.
You have a huge
Or
parking lot
even
in
at
North.
the South, you can build
Build
across.
out. Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I think the opportunity to expand would probably exist more at South than it would at North. Just because we have more land over there than,
Yeah.
we're really landlocked here when you look at, the space that we have,
Yeah.
right here, so.
But it is like if ever there was a push comes to shove kind of situation, we could do something like that.
Right.
We wouldn't be confined to not having that as an option. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. This is so interesting.
It is, isn't it?
As I have
I know.
conversations with our enrollment team about what we're going to do when the
Oh.
demographic cliff
Oh, yeah, yeah.
comes in
Yeah.
2 years, and are we ready? And this isn't nearly as low as I thought it would be, and it's crazy to go back and see
Where
like
we-
you're
where
more
we've been,
likely
right?
to end up.
Yeah.
But also accounting for transfer students
Uh-huh.
and all of that. So I thought this was really fascinating.
I'm gonna try to find the one report on that.
I just doubt that you would be
But-
dealing with 5,000, but
Yeah.
you definitely, the other thing that's good is seeing, I don't know, what happens when you dip that low and you still function fine with
Right.
2 buildings in the 90s.
So
Should
true.
ask the people who were here. But
In the 90s, yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, my graduating year, 2,881 students in the school.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Wow.
that was our,
Yep,
so 28, like in the
93.
mid-90s, we were 2,800.
Yeah, I mean, I was
were all fine.
3,800 in our class.
Did it
85.
feel like that? Like, do you think you feel any differences, from, because it's,
that's
No.
about the same as, that's just 100 shy of today.
Well,
really.
wait, we had
No.
780 or so in the class.
Wait, I thought it was
780
1,000.
times 4.
28,000 or 2,800? Sorry.
For Julie it was, but not for Michael.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it. Right.
And I know we only had 630 graduate out of that 715. Because we set a record, unfortunately. Not to get off topic, but it was an all-time
wow.
low. Like,
An all-time
awesome.
low?
She's a numbers person.
Right, I was gonna say, so you would remember those.
it made me sad. I'm like,
Oh my
what
gosh.
happened here? I don't know what.
It made me
so-
sad.
You were.
But if you think about it, like, if you
Yeah.
look at the history,
We're
like, the
3,100.
last 4 to 5 years is the highest enrollment we've had since
Yes.
really going back to the 70s.
Yeah.
Mid-70s.
Right?
And I'm always trying to think, will
So
the
fascinating.
footprint of the district expand? Will the type of housing that's zoned change to where we've got more density, all these condos and apartments along railroad? No, like, I can't foresee
Yeah, not
Pretty
anything that I'm
landlocked, right?
hearing
There's
about.
not swaths of farmland that are still undeveloped.
Right.
In fact, this property is one of the last
Yeah.
undeveloped.
And
parcels.
Timber Trails, I
feel
think, was
like-
the only one that I
Timber
thought
Trails,
of.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
That would have families, but that's a mixed community too, because they have townhomes and they have, they don't have condos, but I think they do townhomes and stuff in there as well.
Well, and typically you'll see different enrollment numbers from different types of properties.
Right.
So, single-family houses typically will provide you the largest number of students, if you will.
Sure.
Where condos along the railroad tracks, not so much necessarily, so there's different numbers within those that you look at and you say, okay, a single-family home is going to provide us at least one student or two, those kinds of things. So, that's how you look at those and kind of get a determination.
Nothing seems compelling from the historic data or forward look that would give me pause.
That-
As to-
To me, that's the question tonight, is there anything in here give the board pause to say, hold off? Okay.
Well, I mean, I would say, hold off just with regards to this, but
Right,
just
but there's
only as to
other-
the demographics. There
Yeah.
might be other things.
Right.
Okay.
So any other questions on
Well, I
enrollment?
mean, I just, it's over recent, have we had like a dip in enrollment over the last year?
Our enrollment this year is gonna be 3920, so I'd have to compare that to last year.
I think it looks like
It was like
100.
3957.
I think last year was just over 4. I mean, just if I'm looking
4,000.
3967.
Yeah.
down
So just
70, I think it said for the freshman class
Yeah,
or something
yeah.
like that. Here, it's on table 33 where you can see the changes in enrollment. So it's down 70 this year, but last year it was up, the year before that it was up 50, which I think is, a lot of people came to the public schools thinking they were going to be in and then back to private.
So,
and-
yeah, so 3967, I think we're projected 3919. This is all October 1 data, so we'll look at the October 1 enrollment report, but our 6-day enrollment was 3919, so we'd be about, what is that, 46 kids down from last year to this year.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Just wondering.
And
has
then,
this
the only
been-
question I would have is, would we ever be concerned that there would be redistricting done and things like that? I mean, that's probably not gonna happen because we're. a
But the
consolidated-
board has to vote on that.
Yeah,
right?
I
Like,
would-
that's right.
your school boards
I would-
have to vote.
So
No
that
one's
was what I was
petitioning for
running.
it. It's not like
the
Westmont,
politics.
they're
It would come, it would
Just-
come out of the
they
blue.
can't
if
Okay, that's
they
right.
did, yeah.
Okay,
Like
you're like
they do
Westmont.
for-
We've not had,
then-
there's been no history.
No,
of that
no.
here. Nothing on the horizon that
All
would give
right.
us
Okay.
a reason to believe that was coming.
Again,
I've never heard anything, but
never seen that.
it's not like Westmont, or,
That's
like that.
the
way
third-
it's
that is
right
the
now.
third rail in education,
Right, in the
right?
state
Right.
of Illinois.
Redrawing attendance boundaries, redistricting,
Oh.
yeah.
Wouldn't happen right now.
So.
Right,
Okay.
but I'm sorry. But doesn't that mean that the board,
Yeah,
school
right.
boards
Yeah.
have to vote that? It can't that
doesn't just happen. Yeah.
come from a outside political body in
Right.
the government to say we want to redistrict.
Yeah, that doesn't just come out of the blue, it doesn't just happen.
So that's not a
Brian's saying
concern.
it has to happen, like it would have, like the laws would have to change.
Oh.
So it would be a whole, like, different people in office, different lobbying, different.
No, never say never.
Right.
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 And ask
but
Eris,
that's
Eris
a long
might
time
be able to
ago.
weigh in on that one too.
Eris, can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think I would describe that as highly unlikely, although there are states like Florida that have what are known as county school districts. So in Illinois, we have 102 counties. So theoretically, Illinois could go to that model where you would end up with like the DuPage County School District, the Lake County School District. There probably would be an exception in Cook where you'd still have CPS, and maybe you'd have the North Cook School District and the South Cook. But I think there would be such a massive resistance to that, given the local interests in local control, union interests in having their local control, and their interests attended to differently by different school boards. So the probability of that, I think, is extremely remote, but it's not an impossibility because the General Assembly, within reason, could do whatever it wanted to. It could totally rewrite the school code and do something like that. I just think it's highly improbable.
Yeah. Okay. Anything?
And
Any other questions or anything else?
He did
on-
the study for 106, right? Because they are adding an addition to their building for their middle school.
Casarda has done these projections for almost every district in the Chicago area. He's done it for, the last time he did it for us was 15 years ago or 17 years
Okay.
ago. So it's about time because they look out about 17 years. So.
Okay.
Um,
So what would be our next
Yeah,
steps?
so here's the next thing I want to talk about is, so we did the enrollment report. The next piece is, we have the Donovan Group working on like a communication strategy for this, if and when we get to that point. So they're doing their thing. This is my recommendation, but I think the other really important part here is if the board is interested in exploring a sale and making this public, the first question is going to be, do you need it? We've answered this with the enrollment projections. I think the very next question is going to be, what would you use the money for? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's a sufficient answer to simply say we would upgrade our facilities. It'd be great to have really detailed plans to share. Here's what we would do. And so we know that DLA Architects about a year and a half ago did sort of the maintenance need. I'll call that the list of needs that you guys have. I would recommend that this fall, which we're ready to hit go on this with the board's blessing, is to do a stakeholder engaged facility process where we do surveys and focus groups. Basically add the wants to the list of needs that the board already has in place. If there's no concerns with that, we're actually ready to send out a survey on this within the next week or two to start the process going. And we've talked to Ed Wright and Paul Guida from DLA. They could then take all this information late fall, early winter, put it together with the assessments they did a couple years ago, and by mid-January have a fully fleshed out plan that had community involvement in it too. Then we give that to the Donovan Group, and now we've got enrollment projections, we have a plan for how the money could potentially be used. Then the board can make a decision on what to do. So I guess going back to that original question, is there any concerns from the board with us proceeding with doing that part of the facility plan over the next, we think it'd take about 3 months.
In the facility plan, it would just be general information, not tied to anything
Right.
like
Right.
this?
We're also coming up on a
Yeah.
referendum.
Yep, we're gonna need it anyway. That's, I mean,
The bond issue.
Yeah.
Bond
Right,
issue.
Bond issue,
right,
yeah.
right,
I don't
yeah,
have the
not-
word right. Bond issue.
Bond
So
issue.
people might think
Right.
it's naturally part
I
of
just want to
that.
like tip anybody off.
Yeah.
But
Right.
we've not done this though before, a survey to the community.
I don't
saying
think so,
what are
have we,
your
Brian?
Very much
I know we've not
so.
done it during our
Desires?
time.
No, not
Okay.
anything since we've been here, and so that's, working on 9 years now, so.
I feel like there's been a lot of surveys and community involvement under your leadership, Brian, and maybe I just wasn't paying attention when Tim was in the role, but I don't think that seems strange. We just put out a strategic
would,
plan.
yeah.
I mean,
I
I don't, yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. Because
No, I love the
I mean,
question. I'm trying to think it through. too.
Like even outside of this discussion about the property, like we're going to need this to present to the board in like February or March anyway, because the board's going to need to make some decisions on the bond issuance, which
Right.
is coming up pretty quickly
That's right.
too. So
Right.
Remind us-
if this is added to that, I don't see the harm in.
The potential timing of close, meaning we'd even get the funds, would be spring, we think.
talk
Talking about the bond issue?
No, I'm sorry. If this
The properties.
transaction were to proceed, I think we've talked about a range of, Eris might have said, if it all works well and we're all
Yeah.
in sync, 12 months to, I don't
So
remember.
that's the third part of what I want to talk tonight, and that's a great question. So Eris, can you talk about that? Like, the third thing I wanted to find out from the board is, are there any concerns with giving Eris authorization to start preparing terms and conditions behind the scenes as well? So can you talk about that process and what it looks like, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of selling the property, the board has two options. Assuming you're going to sell it to a private entity like Bridge or Duke Realty or Cornerstone or somebody like that, it's going to be either by sealed bid or a public auction. And in order to sort of maximize the value for the district, you're going to want to give any potential buyer an opportunity to, one, make a determination that their project is feasible on the land. The soil has the capacity to bear the weight of these buildings. There isn't contamination, things like that. It's just physically possible. And then secondly, they're going to need an approval period too. So what I have done with similar transactions, and this is, I would consider it a market-oriented arrangement, for the feasibility period where they determine whether they can physically do what they want to do on the land. That would be 120-day due diligence. And then once they cross that boundary, then some of the earnest money would go hard, is the expression, meaning it becomes non-refundable. And then they would have a 210-day approval period. And that's, where they would need to go to the municipality and get approval to do the project. So that's when there would be a plan commission hearings, probably multiple. There would be action taken by the village trustees, and they would then see if they could get what they need to build the amount of space, industrial and distribution space they want on this land. And then if for some reason they determine they can't, they would bail out, and there would be, a partial return of their earnest money. But so in terms of timing, 120 plus 210, that's 330 days. That's basically 11 months. Normally, I will put in the approval period if the applicant if the buyer is, making good faith efforts and they just need a little more time, they can put down a little bit more earnest money and then get, say, an extra 60 or 90 days. So realistically, from the time that you publish notice of this, say, sealed bid process, you got to publish 3 weeks in a row. You schedule the bid opening, the board approves it, which would then be the effective date. You're talking about 11 to 12 months from that time before you would actually have a closing and you'd receive the proceeds of the closing in your bank account.
Okay.
So I do have a question on that. When you prepare for bid, we'd have a minimum bid, correct, that we would pick?
I would recommend that you have a minimum bid, yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure. And then, so that would be a discussion for us to see with the terms and conditions as to what that minimum bid would be, right?
It would be, yeah. So, just to put some numbers out there, so Bridge, in their March letter of intent, they proposed $65 million, but they were under the assumption that the district owned all of the parcels, and that's another issue we should talk about when we get past this, but it's plus or minus like 79, 80 acres, but there's two parcels kind of in the east middle that are owned by the Park District, and their land is like 7 acres, more or less. So basically, the district owns like 91, 92% of the land. But what Bridge told Brian and Brian when we met with them and the two board members back in the spring is that they would prorate that value for the amount that is owned by LT. So if they offered $65,000, and let's say that was the winning bid through this process, and 90% of that is going to be roughly $59,000, just to keep the numbers simple, they would prorate the value per acre or per square foot to what you guys actually own. So they would be buying less than what's in their letter of intent because you don't own about 7 acres of what they thought you owned. So we'd want to set the minimum bid in relationship to what the district actually owns. And so we have Bill Enright's appraisal at $68 million. Bill valued everything, so that would probably be prorated down a little bit too.
So, Eris, talk about what would happen from your perspective. What would happen first? Like, would you prepare draft terms and conditions, bring them back to the board to review, to discuss all that?
Yeah, I don't see any harm in doing that. At least the board members can see, everybody can see kind of what the terms and conditions are, and I think that would answer a lot of questions in terms of what the transaction would look like. And then, that can be done at the same time as you gather information from the community in terms of your wants and needs for how that money would be spent. You know, I think you said I could certainly have the terms and conditions done probably in a week or two at the most, and then get that to the board members. I know you've got to gather information from the community, but you would have those documents and that document available for review and discussion and questions and changes, et cetera. So
just from a facilities plan timeline, once we administer the survey, we get the results back. We're also planning to do sort of a focus group with our LTCAC on November 8th. Let that group weigh in as well. We want to be in a position whereby right after November 8th, we can give all the data to DLA, give them about a month or two to prepare the report. And when we met with them a couple weeks ago, I said we want something back by mid-January. And that way, mid-January, we would have a fully fleshed out comprehensive facility plan. So I think if we backdate from there, then if the board's interested, Eris could prepare a draft of the terms and conditions. We could look at that at the October regular action meeting to review and weigh in and just kind of keep things moving step by step. Sorry, Michael, go ahead.
I was just going to say in closed session.
Yes.
Of
Oh, yeah.
course.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, all this still stays
Yeah.
pretty under wraps here because
Yeah.
we're not.
So I mean, I think, I mean, I'm just still a little concerned. I mean, I know it's for a greater good, but then, like, all of these activities that we would potentially be doing from, scoping out, obviously, which I would agree with, that we need to do layout, like surveying and getting input. I just feel like there's going to be a big backlash of that community that would be heavily impacted by this, that is right near there, that would say, the nerve of you to have gotten all this input and gone forth and gotten this community input about your needs, and then turn around and use that to build your plan for the sale proceeds of these sales off of our kind of backs, basically, and not being transparent with us.
Yeah,
The-
I mean,
I think that's something that will hit hard, and potentially when all of this happens, when all this becomes public in our sphere and out. I mean, I'm not saying we're going to be in elections coming up, and how this will play into, we shouldn't be worried about politics, but
right.
the board is going to be affected in some way for sure, depending on how this unfolds as we're going into an election season.
Right.
It could
Yeah, I don't think you can this is what we've thought from the beginning, right? Where I don't ever want to underscore how, if or when this becomes public, that community is going to be really upset. And that's why I think it's a methodical process of doing this the right way, because I don't know that there's a way around that. I don't know if it's possible to do this in a way that makes especially those 20 houses or 25 houses feel good about this.
Well, and just to play other sides, this process could launch and it could fail, right? Market conditions could change materially. We could not get our minimum bid. And the idea generation, perhaps we should all be thinking of it not as a one-time thing, but a long-range plan that would be equally valuable, or generally equally valuable, if we did all these things over 10 to 15 years versus a bond issue or some other situation.
Yeah.
So, but good to be making sure we're not anchored on this is going to happen and this
Right.
is why we
Right.
rolled these ideas
Yep.
so quickly.
So the other piece of that, I really appreciate understanding all of the steps between now and making something public and is what needs to happen, and getting key stakeholders involved and being ready to go, because we have to do some of that anyway. What might be helpful without eating up too much of the time allocated to Donovan Group's retainer, or however we're working with them, maybe just a one-sheet summary of how they would, like, any suggestions, and I would want to see not just a deployment, but like messaging. How do you propose doing that? And then the other piece of that that's not necessarily comms related, like, can those 20 families that own those houses turn around and sue the district? Like, are we gonna have to look at settlements on the other side? I don't know anything about that.
Eris,
I mean, I can talk to that, yeah. So, once the property is under contract with the successful bidder, the school board is really just on the sideline. It's the entity that will be channeling all of the potential change will be the village, and there's really no cause of action that a neighbor could have against the district for seeking to sell his property. You have the absolute right, so long as you follow school code requirements, to sell your property. Now, I could see that let's say the village approves a distribution and warehouse site consistent with what Bridge or one of the other winners want. You could have a group of neighbors sue the village and Bridge for the threat of noise, the threat of particulate matter, giving them a zoning change that the neighbors thought was inappropriate. But those are not claims against LT, because you guys are just selling your property. It would be the village as the defendant. It would be potentially the buyer of the property. But yeah, like I said, the board has the absolute right to sell the property. And once it's under contract, the board's going to take a step back and let that process unfold, because it's really not your process. Under contract, you would be giving the potential buyer, the contract purchaser, the ability to go through the process and get a zoning change or not, if the village denies it. And then Bridge or Duke might sue. They might sue the village saying, hey, we were entitled to this. We met all the standards under Illinois case law for a zoning change. So there could be litigation, but it's really going to be contract buyer, village, and maybe the neighbors, not LT.
So, Eris,
Real quickly, I want to just give us a quick time check. We have just a few minutes before we have to go into open session.
We
So,
can do.
Eris, quick question. So the municipality, Willow Springs, could stand in the way of this if there's a required zoning change. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
I mean, whoever buys this is going to need a change in the zoning class. They're probably going to need some special uses and variations in terms of, possibly, curb cuts or signalization or turning lanes or changing the elevation of the property. There's going to be a lot of municipal involvement. So whoever, and I think Bridge was pretty frank with us that, that's what they do. They go through this process on a regular basis of getting the necessary entitlements to build the kind of facilities that they build, which is, as you remember from that map, they're doing this all over the Chicago area and the Midwest. So that's their bread and butter business, is navigating that process and I'm sure being prepared to make compromises to get enough of what they want to make it make sense.
Okay, so if we sold it and they bought it, but they don't get the zoning, then are they on the hook for that? Or do they?
No, they wouldn't close.
They wouldn't buy it without.
Yeah, they wouldn't close. So that would be part of the approval period.
Okay.
Part of the approval period would require, they would insist on being able to get any zoning changes, variations, special use permits, whatever the case may be. If they were unable to get those things, they would simply give a formal notice to the district saying, we're looking to terminate the agreement. They would get some, but not all of their earnest money back at that point. And then you continue to own the property, and life goes on as it has, since the 50s with this property.
But presumably
I think-
the village would be motivated to do this.
Right.
And before we leave closed session, I would
Yeah.
just ask that we put all our materials back in the folder
Yes.
and close the folder.
Yes.
So here's what I
Probably
need is,
more
are there
questions
any
later.
concerns, like if we continue with three things, have Eris draft some potential terms and conditions, have the Donovan group move forward with a plan, a communications plan,
Messaging.
and then move forward with a community engaged facility study, which we will use anyway for the bond issuance.
Yeah.
Is there any concerns with us doing all that in the meantime? And then we'll kind of see where we're at in October, and maybe, if maybe
to have
we use the
another
October closed
conversation.
session to
Yeah.
review the terms and conditions.
Sounds might be a good idea.
Yep.
So does that work, Eris? We have a meeting on
That works for me.
October 24th.
Absolutely.
So-
Yeah. Yep.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks, Eris.
Thanks, Eris.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good
night.
meeting. Take
Okay,
care now. Bye.
Okay.
All right.
We'll move forward with
Yes.
that. And
Thanks.
now we need
We need a motion.